Here we are, another edition of Con-crete University. I'm Dean XLB Free. For those who know me, Aduro H.W. Lewis, and it's time to get this thing started. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, Con-crete University is a platform that we use in order to try to detour those who are heading toward incarceration, away from incarceration. This is about helping loved ones of those who are incarcerated, and for anyone who's trying to help to stop someone who's already headed that way, as well as for those who are incarcerated. So today is the 20th of May, and we're about to get into the show. And as we usually do every single time, we have to come with our theme music. So during this period of time, we'd ask as many of you as possible to tune in, just give you your name, let me know that you're there, and we'll send shouts out to you if that's what you want. If not, then we won't do that. Let's roll. Con-crete University 101.
It's Con-crete University. So before you enroll, ended up in the penitentiary. Listen up the Dean XL. Be free. And you will know before you go. Never have to see how prison can really be. Listen, learn and practice consistency. This is prison literacy. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Con-crete University. Yeah. Whoa. Con-crete. It's Con-crete University.
Before you enroll, prison literacy. Let's get it. Let me see.
University. Oh, it's Con-crete University.
Yeah, I think you might change. You always do, man. Get the cards together.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Once again, Dean XL Be Free for Con-crete University 101. Today is May 20th, 2026, and we're about to get this thing started. First of all, I'd like to give a few shout outs as I usually do. Always to my core three, that's Alexis Bronson, Eric Bronson, and my significant other, Renee Rivera, for all that they do around here to make this show possible. We thank you. I thank you, and I could never thank you enough for the things that you do for me in this time of trying to make things happen. Also, I'd like to give a quick shout out to, I don't know if you want to call it a shout, but, to the Bronson family. As I told you last week, we had a loss in the family, and we definitely want to, thank all of you that send up prayers for us and who stay with us during our moment of silence. Was greatly appreciated. These are things that happen that are inevitable, but still the love that you have for a loved one can usually never be grieved in a specific type of way. Everyone does theirs in their own way. And one of my ways to doing that was to, let people know about our loss. So as we move on today, we got a very special show this afternoon, or this evening, doing something that we've never done before. But as I say, if you hang out and stay with us, we have more things in store. I mean, we're pretty much new to this, but we're continuing to work through this because we're true to it, and we're going to make different things happen. Tonight's show will basically be a conversation between myself and a brother by the name of Michael Bronson, who just so happens to be my father. And this show is really dedicated to anybody who is a parent and has had lost their children to incarceration or their child to incarceration, because many times we say on this show, it's not just about the person that's incarcerated that's doing the time, but it's also about his loved ones and those who are around him that really truly care about him or her that is affected by this as well. So we get a lot of information from that segment, I hope. But before we go any further, we always have a phrase of the week on Con-crete University. The phrase for this week will be, don't just count your days, make your days count. Don't just count your days, make your days count. Don't just count your days, make your days count. And this is a phraseology, or this is a quote that could be used whether you're inside of incarceration or whether you're on the streets. You have to try to make our days count for something. One of the things that's really indispensable in this life is time. Time waits for no one. Time is always moving, and there's nothing that you can get back lost time. That's one of the worst travesties in life is to be able to mismanage the resource of time. Time is one of our greatest resources. It's more precious than oil. It's more precious than people. It's more precious than anything, because without time, all of those other things can be squandered. So I'll repeat it again. Don't just count your days, make your days count. Many times when I was incarcerated, I would walk past people's cells, and I myself in the initial stages try to do it until the old guy told me that it'll make my time harder and longer. But you see on prison movies, you see people that mark the calendars, that put the X on there, got one more day down. And so I used to do that in my early stages of county jail. My mother, send me calendars and things of that nature. And so I would just be marking those days. But it is true that I found, I don't, again, time is always as time is always as time is always, except for like a leap year or something. You may have, things dealing with the equinox that may change and make the little days a little longer, a little shorter. However, by you counting that, even though it's 24 hours in a day, it seemed like I was always looking at that calendar because I was anxious to mark off that day to get that day done. But when I had a routine, when I had things that I had to do, and I started, making things happen or moving and didn't pay so much to the calendar, it seems like the days go faster. So even for those people that are on the streets, make your days count. Even when you're talking about birthdays, there's a quote that I like to use during birthdays. It's not about the amount of years in your life. It's about the life in your years. It's not about the years in your life. It's about life in your years. So I guess what we want you to know here on the show is make your time wise. Use your time wisely. Use your time wisely. You must have time. You must be able to use your time to the best of your ability. So I'm not going to keep us too much longer with me just babbling. In the next few minutes and everything, I will have my father on. But as I, bring him into this, I have to give you a brief understanding of not only what my father means to me, but some of what my struggle is about and how I got into the condition and the situation that I was in. I told you before that someone sent a quote to us, a comment to us, and they said, well, no, actually, I'll take that back. I was speaking to a group of high school students at KU, at Kansas University. And one of the questions that was asked was, how is it that you had an upbringing, that you weren't poverty stricken? How are you? It was that you were it had a great upbringing and was not poverty stricken, going a little fast. And you still ended up going into prison. You ended up in prison. So there's so many different things and different ways and different stuff that led to, making the decisions that I made to go into incarceration. But, because life just doesn't happen in a vacuum. Usually when people commit crimes or what have you, it's not just that someone woke up one morning and decided, I'm going to break the law, I'm going to commit crime. There's usually circumstances that led to that and to the decisions that are being made to do whatever it is in the crime game to get there. So basically what I want you to know about my upbringing and my father before we bring him on here is that, I was raised again with two loving parents. Both of my parents were loving. Not only were they loving in the fact of things that they did for me, but they consistently, even to this day, share with me and told me that I love me. There's never been a phone call unless it was some glitch or something and we rushed off the phone for some reason, but we always tell each other, that we love each other. That's just what we do. So my parents, when I was probably about maybe 6 or close to 7 years old, maybe even a little bit, 6 or 7 or what have you, they separated from one another. And when they separated, my father, moved to a different state, took on a wife and moved to a different state. And so, of course, initially that was kind of difficult for me. But one thing about my father and myself, we always stayed connected. So there never was a separation. He was always in my life from the day that I was born, April 29th, 1969, until this very day that we're here now. So I wanted to put that out there. When I did my time, he was there for every up, every down, every trial, every parole board hearing. He was always there. And so he told me, and then we'll get into this deeply more and everything, that he was going to do this time with me. And if I had to sit back and look over those years, there never was a time that I looked back and he wasn't there. So I just wanted to share that and let you know that just like myself, I'm trying to work to become a success story. He will, share some of himself with you, I'm sure, and show you that hopefully that you can see from, what he shares that he too was a success story. So I'm having some little issues here. So anyway, last week we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about, the county jail and the booking process. And I said that I was going to use this time this week to continue with the booking process. My sister Alexis is getting tired of me keep talking about this booking process. But if you're in any way becoming fatigued by me talking about the booking process when it comes to the county jail, know that same fatigue will come to you when it's time for you, if in order, hopefully, that doesn't happen. But if you get in an unfortunate circumstance where you end up in the county jail, I want you to seriously know and understand that is a long process, and it is very, very arduous in the fact that, it drains you. It just drains you. So stay with us on the reels. We appreciate everybody that's been tuning in and watching us throughout this, period. I give shouts out, like I said, usually times and everything, but we're going to get into this and really not have too many shouts out. It's been, a difficult week for a lot of people with springtime coming in, getting ready for children to go back to school and that nature. So, we just have to really remember again with the time, sometimes we waste a lot of energy on things that may not need energy to be wasted on. But that's one thing that we have to always remember: this time lost cannot be regained. You cannot get time back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So use it to the best of your advantage once again. So I'm really kind of anxious to go ahead and, put my father on the show, in another couple minutes or whatever. But again, if there's anything that you've listened to or heard throughout any of the shows that I've done, whether it be one of the reels or whether it be some of my, supplemental videos, if anything that you have questions about, if there's anything that may come out like a contradiction or anything of that nature, or anything that just seems like just doesn't make sense, feel free to, send us anything that you want to anytime, throughout the links, through the emails or what have you that you have, comment sections, and let us know what the inquiry might be. And we'll do our very best to go ahead and give the answer to what that is. So I'm just so ready for this. So I'm kind of like babbling and everything, but the lesson that was supposed to be for the day was going to be about, the whole, we talked about strip searching last week. We showed you a good demonstration of what it is like to be pat searched, what it was like to be strip searched. And as we move on, we're getting to your mugshot photo. We'll be showing you, why it is that people, have a mug on their face when they take the mugshot photo. We'll take you into fingerprinting and what that's all about, what that entails, and why that's so important for law enforcement and for the system to have you fingerprinted. So these are things that most of us will probably say, man, everybody knows that. That ain't nothing new. That's nothing else. But I'll tell you the truth. I learned something from the whole fingerprinting when I was doing the research for the reel. Is I'm so used to when I was incarcerated, when I got locked up, fingerprinting was about rolling the little roller over your hand, sticking your hands on a piece of paper. So I was talking to one of my friends. You always hear me talk about Low Top Damon. I'm talking to him, and he kind of hit me to the fact. He said, man, I don't even really do the ink thing no more. They got computerized stuff that they can just put your hand on now, and they fingerprint you, right there without even getting the ink all over your hand. And so I did, again, some research and looked deeper into that. There's so many stuffs that are new and improved, state-of-the-art stuff that I didn't know about because of the 3.5 decades that I was away. Even policing is changing. It's forever changing, just like the cell phones. So I see my cousins are saying hello to me. How you doing? Hotep, to Brother Charlie Mills. I see you. Patrick here. Right on, Brother Patrick. Reggie, got you. And, of course, my lovely daughter, Tyra. So we got people that's tuning in. And make sure that you see on this post, on this link right here, because we had to switch over. We had a couple of difficulties. So on one page, it may not be seen. But if you switch over now, the links are popping up on the right when they tell you to go there. So I thank my sister Lexi for keeping us, in tune to what's happening there. So without further ado, I'm going to have to bring, my hero, I'm going to have to bring what we call in the family the Don, because he's the Don of the family. Have to bring him in, and we have some questions and answer section that we're going to try to find out what this whole thing is about with regards to parents who have to watch their children suffer and go through the whole mass incarceration situation, because we'll never be able to iterate it enough that it's terrible. All right, brother, I see there's my cousin Owen. I see you. And it's just a terrible situation for a family. When one person goes to jail, it's not just that one person, it suffers the family. And so we're going to get into that some more. So I'd like to bring my father in. Here's the time to bring him in. Lex, bring him in. Let's pop him up there. And let's see what's happening with this. Bear with us for just a second. We'll get it right. And as we're saying, this is our first time at doing this. And hopefully, as the days go on, at least each month we'll have a different person to, pop up on the screen so you can see their faces. They share their truth. And so that's what we'll continue to do. Because again, this is not just about us here at Con-crete University. This is a movement. We're trying to create a movement in order to stop some of our youth, as well as even some of our older people, from making decisions to lead themselves into that place. Because again, whatever your decision-making process may be, once you've experienced prison, it'll make you change your mind about a lot of things. When I was locked up, okay, give me 1 second. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to mess that up. Okay. Right here. Bear with us. I don't see that. As far down as it goes. Hang with us, y'all. Hang with us. It's coming together. That's it. Okay, so let's just stay on this. All right. So again, we're asking you to bear with us. It's the first time doing it, and you can best believe that practice leads to improvement. So even though we didn't get it right this time, we will get it right the next time. It's something that's going on inside of the thing. She's trying to tell me to get done. So there's nothing over here that you can do. She just ended the call, so. Right now, it's live. So as we say, practice leads to improvement, but also, these are human. We're human beings. Humans are able to make mistakes. None of us are infallible. So we will continue on with the show until we can able to make that happen. But again, when anytime, I keep saying this over and over, but again, anytime you lose a loved one to incarceration, the one thing that you have to realize again is that it affects everybody, not only in the family. Sometimes the crime rate or things that you do, the decisions that you make also affect your community. It can affect your household, affects your community, or anything that's around there, like small businesses. A lot of times we get upset in certain communities and we say, man, we don't have nothing in the community. And then you look at the crime rate like the government does. You look at the crime rate in that specific community or that specific neighborhood or area. And this is part of the reason why a lot of people don't want to invest in our communities because they say, okay, well, if they got this much crime going on here, why would I put my money and take a risk on having to pay high insurance or being at risk to having something happen to my property? So again, crime is a terrible thing. We understand, that there's a design, in some, neighborhoods, there's a design in certain communities or whatever for crime to be the way that it is. However, we have to continue to push on and try to find our ways to use our mentality or our mind and the gifts that we have in order to be able to be successful or to be able to make income versus being in the crime. So yes, sir, I'm seeing lots of people coming in, and I know that this is probably going to, even affect the way that you view this. So I hope that you can continue on with us, viewers. So we'll just go back now as we wait on this to come into fruition. We'll go back to the whole process of booking, since this is what our lessons was. Now, remember, we give these reels for a particular reason. The shows are supposed to be commentary over the reels. So if you tune into, Facebook.com/Con-crete University, CONCRETE University. And that's one of the places that you can find us. And also youtube.com/@CON-CRETE University. And so with that being the case with the Con-crete University thing, it's not just about the live stream. It's also about the reels. The reels are one of the more important things that we do. Like I said, this is where we get to talk about the reels afterwards. So our latest reels, we're talking about, strip searching and, body cavity searches where, you're so embarrassing and so dehumanizing, humiliating when things like this happen. So you need to know about that before you enroll into that, because that's one of the things that I was never able to get over, being, standing in front of strangers butt naked just so they could search my body, especially if I knew myself I didn't have something. So getting back to the, booking, as I said, the handprints, the fingerprints, everybody has their own unique fingerprints. It's just as unique as the snowfalls and the snowflakes and the snowfall, so are your fingerprints. And I know any of us that have gone to a science class knows that, hey, during, science class, they're going to tell you about the uniqueness of your humanity or you being a human. Each and every one of us is unique. And we base most of our thoughts on the experiences that we have. So one person may see something one way, another person may see it another way. But when it comes to your fingerprints, there's no two alike. So that means if you leave your fingerprints somewhere, even if you're a person that contributed or the perpetrator of a crime, if you leave your fingerprints certain places and everything, they can come right on the scene of the crime or whatever was committed, and they don't have to go all the way back or whatever. They got little machines where they can just scan right across whatever the surface area is and pull your fingerprints up. And once your fingerprints up, we talked in earlier shows about the NCIC, which is the National Crime and Investigative Computer or Center, National Crime Investigative Computer or Crime. National Crime and Investigative Community. The National Crime Investigative Computer, which goes to the National Crime and Investigative Center. So with your fingerprints, when them scanning something on the surface of wherever the crime was committed, they can send that straight to the computer, and it can read back your entire profile. And so, as we spoke about before, your profile, whatever it is that you've been logged into this computer under, just based on that profile, if whatever it is in your file, whatever is in your profile, if a crime like that is committed in your area, then they can immediately say, okay, well, bam, well, if this person steals Snicker bars, we got Snicker bars that's stolen. You may not have been the person that stole the Snicker bar, but they would come in and talk to you, speak to you, investigate you. And what's up, Eric? I see you. Eric Keith Stafford, one of my brothers. We again hope to have him on here. He's a historian, but hoping to have him on here to discuss about the ordinance of prison and where they started. Getting back to the fingerprints. Fingerprints, you have to be careful where you leave your fingerprints. And sometimes this is how mistaken identities happen, because again, your fingerprints could be somewhere and has nothing to do with you whatsoever. And then a crime is committed in that area. And then they're like, oh my goodness, this has to be this person because we have a profile of him already. And that profile alone is probable cause for them to come and question you about, that particular crime. So just know that anytime you're in there and logged into this computer, whether it be for some of the smallest infractions or whatever, it keeps a memory, like I said, for a forever file of whatever's happening to you. So next week, once we get past the whole booking process, we will actually go into the whole process of what the county jail is like. We'll discuss the count times, we'll discuss the food, we'll discuss some of the activities that go on there, and we will discuss exactly why you're being held in the county jail and you're being prosecuted for a crime. If they have you being prosecuted for the crime, we'll even give you some tips on the things that you should be thinking about even before getting a lawyer. See, a lot of times we are so discombobulated when we go into the trauma of being arrested that we don't even pay attention. We're so busy focusing on the stuff that's going on around us, how this officer might be talking to you, and we're not focusing on what needs to be said or what needs not to be said with regards to when detectives come for you to question you about this. As we say again on every one of the shows, this is not about trying to teach someone how to do crime better. It's not trying to give you tips on how to beat the man or anything like that. We just have to always realize that this whole crime and punishment things, there's multiple entities that are at work in order to not only convict a person of a crime, but to condemn them to a prison sentence. So we're still working on the little technical difficulty that we're having with regards to bringing my father on. And if it doesn't work this week, if we're not able to do it this week, then we'll discuss it next week. So I have another thing that I want to share from my personal life, if you will. Today is May 20th, 2026. I was released on May 20th, 2024. So today, if you want to celebrate or call it a celebration or anniversary, this is my second year out. So you would say, well, man, okay, that's a good deal. You did 7 years out. 2 years out of prison. Whoop-de-doo, good for you. But according to statistics and everything, a person's first year out of captivity is one of the most important years, because if you can't make it through that first year, then the other years won't matter. And so there's so many different things that come with that transition from going from, being incarcerated to parole. So what I can do right now is, as we wait on this, is, share some of the difficulties that come with being released. And again, I don't want to be redundant, but there's several things that I probably have told you before on other casts, and, just bear with me on this if you haven't heard, this for the first time. So one of the things that happened, and me and my father would have discussed it, is when I was released, the day that I was released, when they told me, and if you think about it, I don't know if any of you know this, but anytime you have a big event in your life that's going on, it's kind of like hard to sleep the day before. Well, I'm sure that we talk to any person that has been incarcerated. The day before being released is probably one of those days that you don't get sleep. It's a sleepless day. It's a sleepless night. You're up because you're thinking about, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What's going to happen? What's this whole new experience is going to be like? And you don't have to spend 12,975 days incarcerated for this to be something that happened. This is just my experience, because I've met many of men have many cellies. Appreciate you, brother Artist Swafford, brother Mujahid. Thank you for the congratulations. That is a major accomplishment. And this is one of the brothers who helped to raise me while I was in prison. So he knows, for me to get out and stay out for any length of time during a particular period of time of my life, it definitely is a blessing, because I was on the road to destruction even while incarcerated. And so there were some people, if they, was to take a bet on, this dude gonna make it when he get out, not everyone would have been like, yo, he's gonna make it, he's gonna make it, he's gonna make it. So I thank you, brother Artist, for your support and all that you've done to help keep me straight, with lots of things. So I appreciate that. So one of the things that was an issue after me being able to not sleep, that next morning and waiting for this time to come for me to leave, when the day came and they said, okay, it's time for you to go, I had several men. It almost caused a big problem, because they have a thing called the walk of shame. That's when you get in trouble and you have to be we walk to segregation to the hole. And the other part of the walk to shame is anytime they catch an officer of corrections doing something wrong, they walk that officer out. They usually walk them out in front of the whole entire prison, kind of to shame them and say, well, if you work for the inmates or you doing illegal activities or whatever, we're going to shame you by having you walk through all of them. So that's the walk of shame. But the walk of fame is when you're being released, when you have to take this walk from the prison that you were in, the cell house that you may have been in, module pod, cell block, house. Some people call them houses. when you're walking that line in order to go home for that day, walking up to where they release you from, if you made any kind of bonds or any kind of friendships with people, they're happy to see you go. So they got people on the fence and saying, yeah, man, you got this, you can do this. And so the day that I was, about to leave, they had to bring the sorts team to say, hey, man, all you do is not about to try to walk him up here. Maybe a couple of y'all can go, but we're not going to have all these people. And I mean, there was a small crowd that was coming. And so, again, this is not a bragging thing that something like that was to, happen to me, because I was just fortunate enough to have lots of people that was on the inside that care about me. And that was the reason why I continued to go back, to share the same love that they gave me during my time and up on my release. So anyway, I took the Walk of Fame, left, shook a lot of hands and excuse me. One of the major adjustments is being faced with having to pause goals that you might have set prior to release. Yes, and we'll get into that more too, but that is a really difficult thing. Like I've likened it to a hamster on a wheel. You got all these goals, you got this energy, you're trying to run, you're trying to go, let's get something done, let's have, some motion, but you're just on that wheel. There's nothing going on after that wheel, no matter what you think. And so that's one of the major things, like the brother's saying, you're faced with having to pause your goals, that you may have set prior to release once you even get out, because there's so many different things that, maybe a deterrent or a block. So example would be, and I'll get back to what I was talking about with regards to my release as we continue to work on this. I'm not for sure what's exactly going on, but we got the engineer working as well as, my core 3 trying to make this thing happen. And so again, like I said, we may have to channel this one and continue it for next week. Excuse me, call them. Or we can call them. We can bump it to next week. Just have the interview. I would prefer to just bump to next week because we have to have his wonderful face on there. Yeah. Okay, so I have a little announcement to make. Like I said, the plans, just like the brother saying right here, sometimes our best. What's up? I'm getting feedback, Renee, from them. So anyway, is some of your best laid plans and some of your best laid goals, sometimes things happen. Like right now, we had a plan and an itinerary set out to make this show possible with my father again being on here. And there's some issue that's going on with the, either the network or the platform or what have you that's not allowing us to do this. We tried to do a test run earlier and it was working. And so something happened. So when things like that in life happen, we just have to keep on pushing, we have to keep on going on. And so as the brother speaking about, being released, planning. Anybody that's incarcerated should. I'm not saying that all do because many don't. I've even met men and said, man, I ain't gonna make no plans when I get out because you just never know. Man, somebody might, smoke me. Somebody might do something to me and, I end up coming right back. So I ain't gonna make no plans. And again, every time they would say something like that to me, I ain't making no plans. I would have to, use the quote, he who fails to plan, plans to fail. He who fails to plan, plans to fail. So when we were talking about the phraseology of the day, about making your days count, sometimes planning, that's how you make your days count. Even if you're not able to do anything at that particular moment, that particular time, you may not have the wherewithal or the tool that you need, or even the opportunity that you need, but you still have to be doing something with your time that's constructive because, hey, you just never know when that time comes to shine. They say, hey, lights on, lights, camera, action. You got to be Hollywood. So as I was rolling through, this day of leaving, of me going home, I had already making a request from my family. Whatever car that it was in that I was going to be in, I wanted it to be my parents, both of my parents, and both of my children. So I had my mother, my father, my mother, my father, my son, and my daughter. And I requested that. And I was so thankful that I did that because, something we can always look back to. So I had both of them, all of them standing at the gate. I had, multiple people, but I just stayed for the car ride home. I wanted to be with those 4 people, and they made it happen for me. So anyway, as I was leaving, there was this one, officer lady. I won't say her name or whatever, but, she rode up to me. She was like an aunt to me inside the prison. And, she said it right in front of my parents. She was like, listen, if he comes back to prison, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm going to beat his butt myself. We laughed and chuckled about it, but she was real. So to give another story with regards to that, when I first went back, the very first time I went back into the prison to do a class with some of the brothers, and I went back inside. This lady had been on vacation, so I guess she didn't know that I was going to be coming in or whatever. And after she told my parents that she was going to beat my butt if she caught me. So anyway, she was walking past this corridor, and I'm actually in street clothes, and I'm with a warden and a deputy. I'm with two deputy wardens and a bunch of other people, and we have full street clothes on. This lady dang near broke her leg. She slammed on brakes so fast. And she said, "What are you doing back in here? I've been on vacation. I didn't even know you was back in here." And so everybody stopped and looked at her. I have clearly a name tag on it that says visitor. And then she said, "Wait a minute, are you visiting?" Yeah, she said, "Man." So, again, that goes to say that there are some people that, pay attention to your movements, and they start to, like you, because in this whole situation, people are people, whether they do bad, whether they do right, it doesn't depend on what side of the track you're on. Let me see if I can, without messing up something further. So yes, there's quite some adjustments that need to be made. Nevertheless, in the face of it all, we choose freedom every single day. That's right. You have to be freedom-minded. Freedom is a mindset. It's more than just a condition. It's more than just being out on the streets. It's wonderful. But it's something, again, like we're talking about using your time. You have to continue to think, continue to think. And so think about freedom. Even in bad situations, even in captivity, there's men that are more free on the inside than some that are on the outside when you get caught up in things. So Donald Tinsley is is an officer, and actually he's one of the officers that I would like to actually have on my show. And I know some of you will probably say, "Why you want some kind of officer on the show and everything?" Man, this ain't what this is about and all that. But I want you, this is a show that's about humans. This is about trying to save people from going into the clutches of incarceration. So this Donald Tinsley guy, I would like to have him on my show and everything, so he can give you the other perspective of what it's like to be, a prison officer or prison guard. So what he's asking me right now, one of the questions he's asking, he says, "Have you published any of your books you wrote?" Always my favorite books to read when I was in your house. So he was with what you call on the sorts team. We call it shakedown. Sometimes we call them black suits. But these are the guys. They don't sit around and open up doors and do stuff all that. When they come for you, they come for you. And so he was one of the guys that that was on the team that was very popular. And when he came for you, he was one of the better ones. Like, sometimes I ain't gonna say that and everything. But anyway, he said, "I'm very blessed to have met you." Well, me and him are close to the same age. So, he was a little runt on his team, and I was new to the prison. I was a little runt on my team, on my team or whatever. And so, we would have little run-ins here and there, but we always had a mutual respect for one another. So he's asking about books. I spent a lot of my time while incarcerated writing. I used to have, got computers now, but if you look really close, I have a little, what do you call it? Thing, what do you call them? Whatever. But anyway, I have one of those on my finger because I wrote so much. Now, me showing that on the camera, it takes me to another thing. They say, "Well, why do you have," people have asked me, "Why do you have it on this finger and not on this finger?" Most people that write a callus. Most people that write usually have it right there because they write like this. Well, I write like this. And that comes from, being rebellious in Catholic school. When I went to Catholic school, they would take the pencil from me and say, "This is how you're supposed to write." But it was just more comfortable for that way. And so I if you want to call it rebellious, I was rebellious and I chose to write that way. And, throughout my state, people would make fun of me. "Man, you write funny. Why you got that?" But what he's talking about is when he would come into my cell to shake it down, that means to shake it down means to go in there and try to find any kind of contraband, and some has been found multiple times. But anyway, he would come in my cell to, look for contraband. So you have two different kind of shakedowns, in my opinion. You got those where they just come running in. "Hey, this is what it is. Come step out, let's get in." But then you have these sneak ones. Sneak shakedown to me is when they come at like 3:30 in the morning and they wait till you're asleep and they sneak in and they, "Hey, got you, get up." And they catch you. You ain't got time to think. You discombobulated or whatever. And they get you. Sometimes these sneaky ones, they'll come when you're not there. They may know that you're in a yard or you're at a job detail and they come in. So if they're coming in for information, when they come, they're so stealthy. Most times when they, shake you down or whatever, it's just like if, in a police raid or something, they don't put anything back. It's all torn up. Got to put your bed back, make up your covers because they go through everything. And those are the ones that we really don't like. But sometimes they're real stealthy. They'll come into your cell or what have you, and they'll put everything back the way that it was. They'll look through stuff. So Mr. Tinsley used to read some of the stories that I was writing. He'd read some of the some of my material, and as he's saying, some of the best he's ever read. But we have to get back to get back to that, because writing is actually, Mr. Tinsley, for anybody that don't know, I was writing the book, 101 Con-crete University, 101 reasons why not to go to prison. And so from that is where my sister, as I've said before, she said, "Hey, Cam, you wrote this book. You're starting to work on writing this book or whatever. Why don't we make it into some reels? Why don't we take some of the stuff and the old law notebooks," right? And so this is how this came about. So I haven't put together the manuscript to complete it, but I have several friends that are authors that are willing to assist me with that. But there will be books coming to follow this. But right now, I'm just demonstrating some of it on these pages of the social media in order to make it, still be able to get the story out. It's all about putting out the information. Artist Swiper Jr. says the same obstacles and opportunities present them, and at each one we choose whether involvement would send you forward or backwards. We choose forward each time. That's right. What's the sense in going backwards? We're trying to move forward and everything. Progress is forward, projection and forward moving. And that's what we try to do. And even when we do have these, times of upset, I was taught long ago, a failure is only one who won't try. A failure is one who quits. So even when we make mistakes and we fall back, we keep going forward. So I have my son that's popping in now, and he's basically said, I won't ever forget. And I believe what he's talking about on that is what I was sharing about my day of release, because again, 2 years out as of right now today. So I believe at this time at 7:41, I was probably 2 years ago at my mother's house, with my family, eating my first home cooked meal that my sister cooked me. And so my son is also saying they even did randoms on the visitors with the drug dog. Yeah, it probably was this guy Tinsley I'm talking about. No, he wasn't the guy with the dog and stuff, but this is very true. If you're coming to visit and they suspect that you're up to some kind of, illegal activity and everything, they'll pull you over and they even have like he's saying, have a drug dog. They'll follow to your car out in the parking lot, smell have your car smelled. And if things happen, they can even call the local police and have them come to have you open up your car, and they can search it just like they would if you were just on the streets. So it's a whole thing with the whole prison environment is about security, whether warranted or unwarranted security, whether, it's perceived that something is insecure. This is what they have to do. This is their job. And so my son has been, hit on a couple of times where they pulled him to the side. And if they find anything, or even if they don't find anything, sometimes they could be so angry that they'll terminate your visit just because they didn't find something. So again, sometimes it's just about human error. It's about people just, trying to do their job. But sometimes it's about crime and punishment. We hear this term crime and punishment. We don't hear crime and rehabilitation. It's called crime and punishment. So when it's a crime is committed, some people and some officers and even some judges, district attorneys, or whoever the case may be, try to figure out, don't care much about figuring out what the intent was behind whatever it is. We just want to punish. So we have a society now that's turned into lock them up and throw away the key. Let's just lock them up and throw the key. But then you want to turn around and say, well, we do everything we can to try to rehabilitate them. And so rehabilitation really, truly, as the brother said many times, rehabilitation is basically going up on you. They can tell you to do certain things, but, I've seen many men, myself included, many men that can go through a drug treatment class and pass that, say the right answers, get everything cool. But if you haven't made up your mind truly that that's what you want to do, that you want to quit, then you'll use again. So back to my day of being released. So when I came out this gate and that officer, made her statement or whatever, my beautiful daughter, of course, was recording this moment. If you go into my Facebook page, you can see that my sister, Lindsay, took it and made it into a real nice little video with music and everything behind it. But I'm going to tell you about institutionalization, because as we were leaving, and I may have mentioned this before, but as we were leaving, again, keeping the prison secure, they have what's called a security vehicle. And what it does all day long is just drives around the prison. It just drives around the prison. So for, 6 to 8 hours, they have an officer always on point, just driving around the prison. And these are the ones that, kind of pull over and mess with your visitors sometimes. So as we were leaving the prison and we're headed to go get something to eat, breakfast early in the morning, it's probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And as we were leaving, I was so uncomfortable because I saw that car and I kept thinking any minute this car is going to speed up because they have it's a regular police car. It has like not a regular police car, but a security vehicle, and they have lights on them just like any other security vehicle. And so as it was driving a patrol vehicle, as it was, I saw it drive we were leaving. I keep my eye on it. And so as we were leaving, I just thought at any moment, this car is going to chase us down, turn on his lights, pull us over and say, hey, Mr. Lewis, we made a mistake. We have to send you back. We did the paperwork wrong. Somebody didn't calculate your time correctly, and we've got to send you away. Send you back into the inside. So once we got into Big Biscuit, that's where I had my first meal. Someone asked that before. My cousin Eric asked that before. And I was there with family. I still was unable to calm down because there was too many moving parts. There were so many people moving. And so there were 8 of us. I recall there was 8 of us, there for my release. And so my father found a spot where there were 8 chairs, but they were facing this window. So we could all sit in these, like these little, they look like little stools, and we were able to watch out. I was too uncomfortable for that. So I was like, man, I can't sit this way because all the activity is going on behind me. I can't see the door. I don't know what's going on behind me. But that comes from institutionalization. When you're inside of a chow hall situation, meaning a place of eating, the cafeteria, as they would call it in schools, inside of prisons, this is a lot of times they have different cell houses. And the only times that you can meet with other people or see other people is when they convene inside here to eat chow, because most people are going to go there to eat. And so a lot of violence happens inside of the, as we call it again, chow hall. That's one of the more violent places, not the most violent, but it's one of the more violent places inside of a prison setting. So you have to turn and watch and make sure, because there's been guys that have been hurt that had nothing to do with, whatever activity was going on that was violent. Some guy could be swinging, can't say certain words, but could be doing whatever he's doing, with the pipe or what have you, and end up hitting you if you're not paying attention. You're so busy focusing on the food, and you could get harmed. Back in my days, we had a little thing that where they have these tables, and then you have 4 chairs, one in each direction. Well, the person that's sitting in this chair, he would always look over the shoulder of the person that's sitting across from him, so we could make sure we're watching and make sure this, okay, it's not looking too good behind you. And that person would do vice versa. They would look over your shoulder to make sure everything that's behind you is going on. So it's a lot that goes with that. So when I was inside this Big Biscuit, shout out to Big Biscuit, I guess. Maybe when I blow up, you'll pay me. But anyway, sitting in there, it was just too uncomfortable. And so my father had to remind me, said, man, it's just, you're not the only person just because you came out of prison that watches doors is uncomfortable. This is like a human thing. People want to know, where the exits are, and people want to know, especially for a person that's been in the streets the way that he was at one time. So, it's just a regular thing. But that just wasn't enough to calm me down because, again, when you talk about trauma, one of the things that happens with trauma is your mind can be telling you, I was very blessed to meet you too, O'Donnell. So with trauma, your mind can be telling you, hey, everything's okay, everything's at peace, we're fine. And you can see that, visualize that. But your body, your physical part, which is controlled by your mind, but your physical part gets in the fight mode when something's about to happen, fight, flight, and flee, sometimes even freeze. So as I work through this, I'm getting better with it. I've gotten a lot better with it, but there's a lot of anxiety comes with, being released. So just to go back over this day again, because like I am happy for myself to be able to have made it 2 years. I know many brothers have done 20 years on, been released and been out for 20 years. Just spoke with a brother the other day, Adrian Washington, a brother of mine, if any of those that remember him, there's hundreds of them in the world. So I hope I didn't put his business out there. But he said, hey, man, I've been out for 14 years. And so I said, yeah, I'm coming up on my 2-year mark. He said, that's good because usually, those first few years are the time to send people back. When I looked at the recidivism rate and all the cellies and guys that I knew, which is hundreds, coming back and everything, it's usually within the first, like they said, a year, 6 months, or whether they come back. I told you before last meeting, I think I told you about the guy that I met that was back within 24 hours. He had got out and was back within 24 hours. So that can happen. And there's even stories of, and I'm sure that, there's other guys that have been there longer than me or could remember this. I've only heard through stories. There have been men that were about to be released and got to the front door and looked out and been locked up so long and said, I don't want to be here. I'd rather go back inside of there. So this is a really, really serious thing. I don't know what you're talking about, EKS, about a good idea. but I hope that some good ideas were shared here this evening. So again, we do apologize for the technical difficulties of us not being able to make that happen. We thought that would have been a great thing because on this particular day, I was with both my parents and my children. So we thought that, doing this show on this particular day would have been something that was wonderful because someone could have been able to not just hear my voice and answer questions about, certain things, but someone who's actually there up on my release. Let me make sure I got everything taken care of. So shout out to Grunts again. It's one of my cousins. I mean, I don't know if he wants me to put this out here, but he was one of my younger cousins, and he loved me so much that when I, caught my crime, I was 19 years old, and when I, committed my crime and I was in the county jail for the first couple of days, he was so upset by me going away that he tried to commit a crime himself, hoping that he would come and be in the cell with me or be where I was at, because that's how our bond was. But he didn't realize that he was a juvenile and I was an adult and everything, even at age 19, and he couldn't go where I was at. So he had to go to juvenile. It's not really funny, but he had to go to a juvenile place while I was incarcerated. But you just never know. When we talked about Mother's Day last week or whatever, we talked about, the mothers and the influence that mothers have. You just never know who's looking up to you. You never know who's looking up to you. Again, when it comes to role models, you don't get to choose to be a role model. You don't get to choose. I'm going to be a role model. People make you their role models, just like I did with my father as we, get into this. Hopefully we'll have that done and ready by next week. But you get to choose, who's going to be your role model. I keep, talking about this guy, Donald Tinsley. I've seen he's done some things that have made me mad. I've done some things that made him furious, and a lot of it was because I kept messing up. I told you the story about my best friend, taking his life or whatever. Well, this is the officer that came to my cell to say, hey, man, your right-hand man, just committed suicide and took his life. And so me and Tinsley had a relationship where we were serious about me doing my time. He had to do his job and everything. But sometimes we told little jokes. We laughed at each other, for things that we would do. So when he came to my cell and told me that, I thought it was a game. And I told him to get away from my cell with that plan or whatever. And he had to share with me that wasn't real. So again, on both sides of the fence and everything, it's a human experience, and it's something that, feelings can be involved in. Feelings can be detached to the people that you meet, especially if you're genuine, especially if you're true, especially if you're not a faker about, the people that you meet and care about and like about. And so me and him built that kind of bond, and he helped me along the way, as well as maybe I'm sure that, I don't want to say I helped him. But when I say I helped him, is about some mental stuff. I probably taught him how to, tie shoes or something. But as far as, helping him with regards to catching somebody else, one of the things that you can ask him whenever we get on the show is I never was a snitch jacket. I never was a person to tell or to cooperate with officers. I never did anything like that. It's just because, as my father gets on the show, is one of the things that, we had, discussed before me going in. I ain't raising those, he say stool, pigeon, snitch, right? There's so many different terminologies that could be used. I'm like, I ain't know none of them. I don't even know what a stool pigeon is. So I ain't raising no rats, no stool pigeon, I don't even know what that is, but it comes from, his era time or what have you. So we'll get into the whole situation. Again, we do greatly apologize that it didn't turn out the way that we expected it to be. I hope something was grabbed for this. I hope that something, that I said could possibly be helpful for you. There's many people that are being released. I mean, it's all over the social media, and I'm seeing people celebrate their loved ones, whether they were, did their time for the crime that they committed, or whether they got out because, they found out later that they didn't commit this particular crime and they're being let out because of faulty convictions or what have you. But it's just a joyous thing to see someone, I guess they call it a soldier's welcome, when somebody comes back from war and still is alive. People die inside of prisons. This is real. That doesn't stop. We talked about time. Time doesn't stop. So the same functions that go on inside of a real life on the outside world, it happens in there. People get sick. People die. I have a very good friend, very good friend. I guess I won't say his name and everything. We call him Matt or whatever, really good guy, smart, wise, was into the law, studied, did everything, but he ends up, getting dementia while incarcerated. And for me to watch this man who was a very close friend of mine, it's not somebody I just knew from afar, somebody that was, really close to me, to watch them deteriorate and go down slowly to the point that, most times he didn't remember my name. And two or three of the times that I went back on the inside, I asked if it was possible for me to go inside the clinic to speak to him, just to see him. And they obliged me with that and allowed me to do that. But, life is rough sometimes and everything. We always have to look for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and remember that always it takes rain, and it takes rain and sunshine to make a rainbow, but we have to be careful about the mud. Sometimes we step in the mud, and while we're looking at the rainbow, we focus more on the dang mud than we do the rainbow. I know there's an analogy that's way out there for what's going on at this particular time, but life is rough. And but on the opposite side of rough, however you make it, you make your bed, you're lying. And my mother would say to me all the time. So, make your life a blessing. Don't just count the days. This day is over. This day is over. Try to draw something good from that and be strong with that you got from a good day, and try to carry it on into the next day. Past, present, and future are all the same, So you make decisions now to have a good day, and those same good days that you make a decision to have later on off in the week or later off in the year, you remember, man, I had a good day that particular day, and I'm going to continue up this energy of having a good day. So I guess pretty much that's, we all have jobs when we all have jobs when we get out, helping others to not make our mistakes. And yes, sir, that's true. That's definitely true. And that's why I do what I do. One of the things I learned about freedom is difficult for you to be free around the people that are not free. So why not try to give them the tools that they can use to get themselves to be free? IG Winbush, another great brother of mine, just popped in. He said, failure for most should show that you win due to lessons learned to secure what you seek to fulfill. Yeah. Anytime you don't win at something, it gives you an opportunity to win. So if you feel like I failed at this situation right here, okay, now that you failed, here are the things that I did that made me lose, made me not win, or made me fail. So then you can take those things, fix them up better. And so for the next time you try whatever that thing is, now remember, you have to continue to try, because when you give up, that's the only way that you can fail. So you continue to learn from the mistake that you made. And because they're really mistakes or opportunities. You learn from the mistake that you made, and you move forward. So yes, PIS, post incarceration syndrome. All of us, most of us, I would assume, suffer from this post incarcerated syndrome, which again some people call institutionalized. But the whole thing is about, when you get into a routine of doing something for so long, and we're talking about decades, when you get into that type of stuff right there, and okay, when you get into that type of situation, yeah, it takes a minute for your mind to be able to get back to, the reality of what's going on. Sorry for doing this, but into the reality of what's going on. So, we apply people that, go to therapists. We apply people that work the programs that they were in order to be able to, make it through the situation. So one thing about committing crimes and everything, when you catch, just like with that NCIC, going to jail, being inside of prisons and getting out of prison, this is something that is a part of your life now. Many times, people say, well, when I get out of prison, I just want to forget about it. Well, a brother told me, explained to me, he said, man, and I did this. I made sure that I look back, not just because of that security card, but I took a look at the prison. So one of the older fellow told me, said, one of the worst things that a person can do when they're released from prison is try to forget about it. Because once you forget about it, then you get comfortable, and next thing you know, you've forgotten about it, and you'll commit some of the same mistakes that you did before, and you end up back there. But as long as you remember, that doesn't mean every day dwell on the fact that you did prison, and dwell on the fact that you was, I was locked up. It's not about that. It's about to remind yourself that there was a hell that you were once in, and so you can move towards, paradise, move towards, heaven. But always keep that in your rear view to let you know, hey man, this is a place that I can go, this is what I can do, and that could be fuel for you to continue to do, what's right, or do the right things. So we have to sign out now. Again, I'm not going to do too many of our shout outs. You can look at any of the, past ones that I've done as far as, my plugs, and tell you who to look for and where to go to or what have you. There are most of them. So if there's something, if there's someone that you may find interesting because you find me interesting, we feel free, please, to look up these people, because again, it's about each one, reach one, teach one. And it's about networking. It's about building a network. I think it was Malcolm again that said, a hand like this, it can be powerful, but when you bring those fingers together and ball a fist, it's even more powerful. So for those that are trying to help each other, we've had outings together. For those of us, we're close knit. We have outings together. We share conversation when we have to reach out to each other when we're going through, psychological issues. IG of course included. We appreciate that from each other, and so. We have to work together to make ourselves through it. But networking is very important. There's a lot of resources that are out there, to help those that are, recently being released or what have you. So we have to take it upon yourself. Again, rehabilitation and killing the recidivism within yourself to return back to prison. It's all upon you, but even a feather, remember this, even a feather or a piece of paper is lighter when two or more people lift it. It's lighter. So feel free to ask people for help. Don't be ashamed if you have to reach out to someone and say, hey, man, I'm struggling right now today, because anytime I'm getting into a deep struggle where I just don't think I'm going to make it, it's never really been about, I'm going to go back to prison, but it gets rough for people. I used to be upset with dudes that's coming back and realize, man, it's a lot to endure to come outside. But trust and believe, it's much better on the outside than it is the inside. Your worst day on the streets is still better than your best day in prison. I'm Dean XL. Be free. I hope that you grabbed something from this. And if you didn't, it's not any fault of your own. It's all my fault because maybe I didn't explain it right. Or maybe as my cousin Eric say, I was talking too fast. And my rebuttal to him, maybe you should listen a little faster. So we're going to end this the way that we do, with our theme music on the outside, our outro. And again, we thank you for that. And we will get my father on here sooner or later. And hopefully maybe one of you, maybe there's something that you can add or share with the program. And we welcome all support. Yeah. So let's leave with this. Once again, 2 years out.
It's Con-crete University. Right. Know before you enroll. Ended up in the penitentiary. Listen up to Dean XL. Be free.
Be free.
And you will know before you go. Never have to see how prison can really be. This a learning practice consistency. This is prison literacy. Yeah. Yeah, this is prison literacy. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just put a link.
You send me a link.
Yeah, link. You need a minute, right?
No, I'm ready. We can go right now.
No, we can't. Go pray. And then get on there.
Okay.
I love you. Bye.
Love you, bye. How? Am I still on live? Live. How do I get off the live? Oh, I see it. All right. My bad for being all up in y'all's mix. All right. This is the end of it right now.